Hi, it's Josh from GameByte, and today we have F1 2022 Senior Creative Director Lee Mather talking about new features such as formation laps, new car regulations, the brand new Miami track, and what actually goes into making the series behind the scenes. It's lights out and away we go. Could you walk me through some of the major challenges that you had to overcome when designing a track that's not actually built yet?
Yeah, I say it varies quite massively depending on the type of track. So like in the past, we've when we created Texas, we had people taking pictures of mounds of dirt because they were profiling the entire area. When it comes to a street track, the first thing people do is, right, Google Maps. Let's go and have a look on Google Maps, and they'll Google Earth it. They'll have a look around, and obviously we'll have a request in for the CAD data from Formula One once they've got that locked in as well. When it comes to somewhere like Miami, we knew exactly the region because we knew where it was around the stadium, so that was a good starting point, and we were able to obviously collate as much reference as we could through the normal official channels. And then we had the likes of our I think it's the Madden team actually, who are based out in Orlando. That's the EA Sports and Racing and studio there. So we had some of the guys go out and get some photographers to go and get us some reference as well, because there was some gaps in the data that we had that we weren't clear on. In particular, we had this assumption quite early in the process that it was going to be incredibly flat, and yet there are areas where it's raised and it's quite undulating, with it being roads. We weren't expecting quite so much of that. So yeah, it's been an interesting one, and we've obviously been able to take some of the assets in terms of the stadium from the Madden team as well and share content there, which has been really cool.
Awesome. So it sounds like it's a really big there's a lot of team effort going in from across the teams that you've got going on. Amazing. So after driving Miami virtually, what are your initial thoughts on the track, and do you think it's going to contribute to better racing?
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I really like the contrast between the fast. It is another very fast flowing circuit, which suits the modern cars so well. The cars this year are just designed to go insanely fast and closely together, which is really cool. But then there's that really tricky section that's just so intricate and tight, and it's really something that they're going to be tripping over each other into, I think. And you can definitely see as you come out the back of the really fast section, that's going to be an overtaking point into there. But obviously, if you get it wrong, I say it's such an intricate, tight, twisted little section of track. There's going to be chaos in there, I would think.
Yeah, I know exactly which bit you mean. I've just been playing some today, and the amount of times that I've broken my front right wing and come back onto the straight from that, it's tricky.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you've got a track that obviously the cars are so good at going insanely fast, and they throw something like that in, and it's just like it really shows who can hustle a car, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna separate from the best from the champions, I think, that bit. So you mentioned that a great deal of work has gone into this new driving model, obviously with the new 2022 car regulations. Can you walk me through how those changes actually affect how the cars feel to drive in the game?
Yeah, I think as I probably mentioned the other day, that there's two things that really make the difference, and it's hard to say, well, that's the big change in the rules that make them feel different, because we're also working in parallel to continually evolve our physics and evolve our tyre model. And some of the big changes are felt through the improvements to the tyre model in the relationship between the longitudinal and lateral grip changes. So that obviously gives more confidence. It gives a car that feels incredibly grippy, but not to the point where you're doing insane lap times, because it's not grippier. It's just the feel, the way that those transitions happen between the grip breaking away. So that's probably one of the biggest changes to the feel. And then there's obviously the additional weight in the car. As the cars are heavier this year, you certainly notice that in the inertia, in the turning of the car, but also in the braking, and of course the 18-inch 28s, they'd be enormous, wouldn't they? They'd be very Miami. But the 18-inch wheels, again, unsprung mass is always something that's the enemy of vehicle dynamics, and they've got larger and slightly heavier wheels. And then of course we've got the shift in the underbody aero now, so there's a lot more of the downforce generated under the body of the car. So for players of the game, taking a bit of curb aggressively or getting a bit close to another car, damaging the floor, is something you definitely want to avoid. In the past, it was always if you lose a little bit of your wing, you were losing downforce. Now it's a lot more precious to protect the floor.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super interesting. So F1's grown immensely in the last few years with the likes of Drive to Survive and things like that. So has the influx of new viewers altered how you approach development of these games?
I wouldn't say it's altered the way we approach development. It makes it easier to speak to the team about the different sort of fans who play the game, because it's very easy to get carried away with Formula One being very hardcore, very sim-based, and a game that's very technical. And we've always been, as you've probably seen in the years, we've been chipping away at broadening that appeal to bring in an audience who are less racing game fans, maybe, but they're Formula One fans, maybe less technical players, but players who really are starting to engage with Formula One and the sport and want to play a game. So it's just kind of helped us to solidify the plans that we already had. There's always that cautious, so there's a degree of caution where you think, well, we've got a really solid bunch of people who absolutely love our game. They play it every year and they always come back, and we hit our market beautifully. And it's like, well, do you want to go for somebody who's maybe never played a Formula One game before? Are they going to take that leap of faith and play our game? And it's like, well, with the changes in the sport and Drive to Survive, and the fact that we've done such great work over the last 3 games to really make the game more accessible at that end of the scale, it's the work that we've done's paid off, and it's really sort of just come together with Drive to Survive and the changes in the sport and the new audience coming in.
Amazing. That's great to hear. So there's an option in the game to have the cars perform relatively to how the teams are performing like in the season. Can you tell me a bit about how this performance is calculated while teams are still struggling to understand how their cars handle themselves? And is that something that's going to be updated as the season progresses?
Yeah, so we've always done in-season team performance changes, and we kind of schedule in a number of them, and then we judge how close we are over the course of the season if there's anything significant that's changed, because we want players to have an experience that stays relevant to the real season. So yeah, what we'd normally like to do is wait until, say, Spain to get a real judge of the performance of the cars, because it's a real leveler. It's got a mixture of intricate corners and high speed sections. It's the benchmark for teams testing their cars as well. So at the moment, we're obviously working to what we've seen up to now and which teams are performing well, which teams aren't. But then, of course, it kind of skews it a little bit when you've got a particular driver for a team who's performing better than another as well. So obviously we've got Haas performing really well with Magnussen, Kevin Magnussen. I get Ericsson from. And then you've obviously got Mick Schumacher, who's not performing quite so well. And at the moment, you've got Lewis not performing as well as he's probably expected of Lewis, but George is performing really well. So where does the car sit in the performance scale of things? And that's always a tricky one for us. So we do take as much data as possible. We try and understand the strengths and weaknesses of each car. We try and understand if they are stronger in the straight line, as you'll often see with, like, the Red Bull seems like a missile when it comes to overtaking this year, and yet Lewis spent he spent all of him and pretty much sat behind another car following Gasly. So obviously there wasn't that straight line performance from the Mercedes, but its cornering performance was obviously quite strong. So we try and balance that across the cars as well. So it's really studying the races, studying the performance data. We do some work with Formula One on this as well. They give us some really good data on predicted engine performance, which is something that we factor into our car models as well. So yeah, it's a very intricate system.
Awesome. And this is just me being curious. Obviously, it seems like you're a massive Formula One fan, but is this something that's running through your head while you're watching the race, or do you try and sit down and enjoy it on the weekends?
It depends. It's a mix. So sometimes I can just sit and watch the race and never have to think about it. Sometimes I've literally just got teams open and it's just ping, 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 ping. Yeah. It's you don't want to go pestering too many people in the middle of the race, so I've put it together in an email and send it later. But in recent months, I don't think I've really stressed too much about that. Team performance order is always the talking point. Yeah, so it's hard to gauge. I mean, obviously the Haas is doing well in the hands of one driver, less in the other. The Alpine's looking really good this year. Mercedes not where we were expecting them. Ferrari, jumped ahead of everybody. It's exciting, and something that we on a Monday morning. That's always do we need to change the order? Do we need to tweak this? Do we need to adjust the performance?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Sounds cool. So in terms of the new features, so you've added like the new engineer radio, active safety car segments, broadcast style graphics, and the AR grid slots. This new game feels more authentic than ever. Was that the goal of this for the team this year with this installment?
Yeah, very much so. So we knew what was coming with the rules. We knew that Miami was coming, and we knew that it was going to be a new era for the cars. We also were very conscious of the fact that we've got some really cool features that have been in there for a number of years now, and we wanted to revisit them and do more with them. But we also wanted to, while doing that work, broaden their appeal and their accessibility within the game. As we've already spoken about, there's a whole new audience of players coming to the game who love Formula One. They love watching Formula One. They love the excitement and the spectacle of, but they might not want to engage with some of the real intricacies of the sport. So it's a different style of player and a different audience. And that's very much why things like the broadcast style formation lap is something for a player who doesn't want to park their car in their grid slot with the augmented reality space. Or if you don't want to take part in doing the pit stop minigame and pulling into the pit box, that's something where you can have a broadcast presentation of that. And I think probably the biggest impact will be in the formation lap. Formation lap, we've seen what the formation lap can do in the world of Formula 1. Sorry, the safety car can do in the world of Formula 1. It's a real game changer at some points. And a lot of players love the authenticity of following the safety car, keeping the tyres warm, and then the restart, the excitement of the restart. But what we wanted to do was give players who don't want to engage in that period the presentation of the safety car, but then also the excitement of the release from behind the safety car. And that's why we focused on doing what we consider to be the immersive versions, where a player can do them as they would in real life, and the broadcast versions where they're presented more in a TV style.
Awesome. This is sort of a meme question, really, but on the back of realism, I noticed earlier when I was playing Miami that the harbour area seems to be filled with actual water. Is that going to be replaced with a JPEG by release?
It's a very good question, and I don't know the honest answer to that one, but I have seen the jokes going on our internal. Why have we got water in there? Are we going to swap it for something else?
Excellent. Just thought I'd bring it up. On the UI as well. So one thing I noticed was that obviously this new season has brought with it a bit of a facelift to the broadcast-like UI. Is that something that's going to be replicated in this game, or is it just something that was a bit too late brought in? There's
a small amount to come still. We've still got a little more work that we're doing now, just in the run up to release. So it will be again a closer representation of, but there's obviously significant changes there, and things like driver faces in the driver stack and new elements. They are all quite a large amount of work. Yeah.
Awesome, gotcha. And are there any features that you'd like to implement into F122 but ended up on the cutting room floor in the end?
I don't think there's nothing that really ended up on the cutting room floor. We always go into these with a very well scoped out plan as to what's going to make it in. There's obviously degrees of implementation that vary as we go along. I think the probably the obvious one for launch is crossplay will come post launch, but that's something that we always had penciled in for this year. So full crossplay implementation compared to the cross-gen play which we currently have is what will be coming post-launch. So I think that's an exciting one.
Awesome, excellent. I've always wondered, in terms of like the driving model, how similar do you think these games are compared to like the official team simulators that the drivers practice in?
So I've been quite lucky. I did get to drive a simulator many years ago at one of the teams back when we started doing this in 2010, and I was able to jump into that simulator and essentially drive the lap seconds slower than Jensen at the time, who was the driver whose car I was driving. But I was able to drive it quite comfortably, and it was quite nice really, because I sat in the car and they pointed out one of the switches on the wheel. I obviously fully strapped in the lot. The only thing they didn't do was put the head weights on, because they said my neck wouldn't cope, so I didn't get the fake head thing. And it was a case of, well, leave it in that mode, put the switch in that position, and then we'll talk to you through the comms, go and do a lap and see how you feel. And basically what that was to run it in a reduced power mode, so it was easier to drive. And by the time I'd done one lap, they said, actually, you're fine. You can go flat out. And it was Korea I drove, so you can see how long ago this was. But the fact that I could relate exactly the speeds that I'd learned playing the track in the game to the simulator made it incredibly transferable. And I think the biggest thing that's really reinforced that has been Chembol Bassi this year doing F2, being one of our, obviously he's done motorsport as well in the past, but he's been a big personality in our F1 esports. Moving to drive Formula 2 this year shows how transferable the skills are. I think we've seen, recently Brendan Lee obviously has done some single-seater racing. Lucas Blakely's been doing a little bit lately. So the skills are obviously transferable. There's a lot more to take in in a real car, and there's a lot more around you, and the risks are much higher. But the actual pure pace, skill, and understanding the dynamics of a car are very transferable.
Amazing. That sounds amazing to hear. So on the cover art was obviously revealed the other day, in which we've got the sort of Twitch trio of Norris, Leclerc and Russell on the front cover. Was there any specific thought process behind that lineup? Well,
very much. It's a new era of Formula One. They're a great new raft of drivers coming into the sport. They're super exciting. They're super relevant to gaming as well, because they do game. It's great. Lando's a big gamer. He's got his Quantum, esports team going. And as you said, the Twitch trio was something that, is very cool still, and something that resonates with us very much making a game. So it was a number of things that really pushed us into that direction. And as much as I love Lewis Hamilton, I'm a massive Lewis fan, it's so exciting to see such young talented drivers come through, and to be able to showcase them on the cover as well is is super cool.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree. Sayers is like obviously like quite a young fan as well, so they sort of obviously you still get to put Hamilton on the is it the Champions Edition?
Champions Edition.
That's the one. So yeah, no, that's great to see. Amazing. Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Absolute pleasure.